About 20. Yep. I think we'll get started. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We'll start the meeting with introductions. I'll turn it over to Tim.
I'm Tim Volker. I work for the city of Fitchburg. I'm the director of public works, city engineer. I've been here about 6 weeks now, and I'm getting very well acquainted with this project. So here we also have our consultants on the project. You might recognize some faces from previous meetings. KL Engineering, we have Kevin.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Wayner with KL Engineering. Been with KL for about 8 years and doing this for about 10.
And I have a microphone, so I'm good. I'm Samantha Herheim. I'm with KL Engineering. Kevin is our traffic engineer on the project. I'm the design project manager. We do also have Josh from our office who is working on construction oversight for phase 1. Another important part of our team, someone who is not here with us tonight, is Lorraine Betzel. She is the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Local Program Project Manager for the northern section of the project, and that's from West Clayton Road to the McCoy Road intersection. The presentation tonight will follow this agenda, but before we get started, we just wanted to acknowledge the pedestrian fatality that happened on this road early this year. We don't have any of the accident data yet, but when that accident report becomes available, we will review and see if there are any improvements we can make with the project. Aside from that accident, we do have improvements proposed in that area that we'll talk about later in the presentation. So for the meeting this evening, we ask that you respect your neighbor's time and perspectives, focus input on the Syene Road Reconstruction project, ask clarifying questions during the presentation. If there's a term you're not familiar with, if we're not being clear with something we're talking about, please stop us. We'll try to clarify. Otherwise, please hold questions until the end. We may answer whatever questions you have during the presentation. So this is the third public meeting for the Syene Road project. The first meeting was in February of 2021. It covered Aurora Avenue to McCoy Road. From that meeting, there was a lot of, I should back up. At that first meeting, we provided some high-level concepts and gathered data and feedback on those concepts from the public. From that first meeting, there was a lot of interest in further public engagement. So city staff held several small group meetings with residents and stakeholders in May through August of 2021. In August, the city went through their review and approval process of the cross-section elements for this project, and then we had a second public meeting in September of 2021. At that meeting, the northern portion of the project was postponed, and the design information really focused on the Aurora Avenue to the West Clayton portion. So the goals for tonight's meeting, so hopefully I don't lose my voice, I apologize. We want to provide an update on phase 1 construction. That's the section between Aurora Avenue and East Sherrill Parkway. An update on phase 2 design. That's all of the work north of there. We want to report back on intersection design for the Syene Road and 9 Bark Central Park intersection. Report back on intersection design for the Syene Road and McCoy Road intersection, and also discuss intersection-related impacts associated with that intersection design, and talk about schedule and next steps. So that southern portion that's under construction is Aurora Avenue to East Sherrill Parkway. That's shown in red on this location map. It's under construction currently. The East Sherrill Parkway to West Clayton Road segment we're showing in yellow. That portion has local funding for construction and is planned for 2024 construction. The West Clayton Road to McCoy Road section, which is shown in blue on this map, has Wisconsin Department of Transportation Highway Safety Improvement Program funding and is planned for 2024 construction. Now, there are some requirements for the Department of Transportation funding project. And so we'll cover those throughout the slides. And the slides actually look just a little bit different so we can differentiate kind of between the two funding sources. So the need for this project is really that this was a rural corridor that over the last couple decades has transitioned into a mixed-use, more urban corridor. We need to address the pavement condition and also the intersection functionality. And now I'll turn it over to Kevin to talk a little bit more about the McCoy Road intersection specifically.
Thanks, Sam. So McCoy Road intersection is the location of some crash patterns related to, in our opinion, some of the congestion. Making that left turn from Syene Road was kind of one of the reasons for this proposed change. There's delay for that southbound traffic that it's not a continuous movement, but as you can see, Syene Road tees into itself in a way and meets up with McCoy Road. It's kind of funny, incidentally, at one point Syene Road was continuous north-south, and so this would kind of take things back to the way they were at one point. And I think the big reason that you might ask what the impetus to kind of take McCoy Road and make Syene Road continuous is related to the Capital City Trail crossing. So it presents a good opportunity for signalization to add a traffic signal signalizing the crossing movement there. I'll hand it back to Sam.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll have you keep the microphone. So we'll just touch on the project background and kind of what's happened throughout the process of this particular project. So as we mentioned, as we showed on those photos a couple slides ago, development has really changed the corridor. Syene Road was not updated as development occurred. So the city of Fitchburg hired a consultant to do a study on what improvements should be made to Syene Road to better serve the current use. The study was completed in 2019, and it is available on the project website. We will include the link to the project website at the end of the presentation. In 2020, KL was hired to work on the design, and that started in late 2020. We started with the recommendations from that 2019 study and worked on additional concepts and alternatives. We also had some soils work, some geotechnical exploration that happened, and found that some additional subsurface underneath the roadway improvements would be needed, which increased the cost estimates. So we then revisited those concepts and alternatives to see if there were other cost-saving measures that could be explored. The project was split into phases in 2021. This allowed additional time for public engagement with city staff. The northern portion of the project, shown in blue, was able to apply for and receive that federal funding, that Wisconsin Department of Transportation Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. And the middle portion, shown in yellow, also applied for federal funding, but unfortunately was not successful. And phase one, the red section, that construction started in 2021. That construction is currently shut down for the winter, mostly, although you will see some work happening outside of the roadway. The contractor is working on some stormwater management improvements, and there are some private utility relocations happening. Construction will start back up in the spring. We think April 1st, but that's tentative, and it will be dependent on weather. And when construction starts back up, there will be a road closed with a sign detour condition. What we will do in that space is for local traffic, we'll either have Lacey Road closed for construction and have East Sherrill Parkway open, or we'll flip-flop, so one of those intersections will always be open for local traffic. And we do expect the construction to be completed mid-summer. So improvements along the corridor include sanitary and water main adjustments, a short water main extension near West Clayton Road, stormwater management improvements, lighting at intersection and select locations, speed reduction measures, which we'll talk about further later in the presentation, and some vertical alignment improvements, which we'll also talk about. So the roadway will have a 10-foot travel lane, a 6-foot bicycle lane, 2 of which will be a painted buffer. There'll be painted and raised medians approaching intersections. There'll be an addition of curb and gutter. The sidewalk on the east side will primarily remain in place, although we do have to do some spot improvements. Same for the path on the west side. It'll primarily remain in place with some spot improvements, and there will be curb ramp improvements at the intersections. And now I will turn it over to Kevin to talk about intersections.
So starting from the No Oaks Ridge intersection and just going over some of these proposed improvements and explaining kind of what they're expected to do. So at this intersection currently in the rural configuration, there's a bypass lane, which is a typical treatment for intersection like this. As we urbanize the corridor, the intersection is currently planned for to have a left turn lane, which would help kind of bring more predictability to traffic. People will use the left turn lane every time. There won't be kind of a will they, won't they using the bypass lane or not. So kind of helping assign where people should be as they're utilizing the intersection, which should be a benefit to pedestrians as well, just increasing predictability of drivers in the area. So moving on to the 9-Bark intersection, this is currently proposed as a roundabout. Some features of this roundabout include its size. It's somewhat smaller than a typical roundabout. It's certainly not a big DOT roundabout you would see at an interchange. One of the benefits of that is just to promote slower speeds, which is a safety benefit to pedestrians who are trying to make judgments cross traffic. This configuration would offer bicyclists the option to exit the bike lane and use the shared use paths to transit the intersection. Bicyclists, of course, would also have the option to transit the intersection in the travel lanes with other vehicles. Argus Lane is currently configured as a right-in, right-out intersection with that triangular island to help enforce that access restriction for the left movements. That's proposed to remain right now. It would have a similar geometry after construction. I'll get into it a little bit later, but this is a location, or nearby is a location of a potential mid-block crossing. This intersection is also near that vertical curve. This is what this profile is showing, is the elevation of the roadway as you travel to the north. This dashed line is the existing profile, and so you can see where the solid line is. That would be the proposed roadway vertical configuration, so that would help with visibility when you're looking over that hill. Just to mention Clayton Road before I move on to McCoy, no consequential changes to the configuration of that intersection are planned right now. So as I mentioned before, the current, and actually backing up just a little bit, this is the section of the project that would be funded through the WSDOT HISP funds. So this is a slightly different segment of the project. The current planned improvement would be, like I said, to align Syene Road, so it's continuous northbound, southbound. And then McCoy Road would kind of tee into it. The intersection would be controlled with a traffic signal. And one of the features would be taking the Cap City Trail, which currently crosses kind of closer to the trailhead, away from the intersection, and bringing it to the intersection and providing a signalized pedestrian crossing. This would be similar to MM and McCoy Road that was recently reconstructed. There's signal timing and phasing options to help so that cyclists don't get stuck at that pork chop island. So in a sense, it's a single stage crossing despite having to transit through the pork chop. These islands are recommended generally to help just funnel traffic, make things safer for the pedestrians, provide a refuge for pedestrians, kind of limit which way you have to be looking for traffic to be approaching and making your judgment whether or not you think it's safe to cross. Yeah, so in addition to the roadway reconfiguration and the Cap City Trail reconfiguration, there is that unnamed north-south trail on the west side of the roadway, and it would be reconfigured. The boardwalk would be removed, and another feature is the trailhead driveway would also get pulled into the intersection, which eliminates access nearby an intersection. So it's generally considered a safety improvement just to keep things predictable for drivers as they're entering and exiting the intersection. And with that, I'm gonna hand it off to Sam real quick.
Thank you very much. So there's a lot of requirements associated with the federal funding that's going into this intersection realignment. And so some things that we are required to evaluate and consider are the impacts to the Dane County parcels in this area and also the Capital City Trail. We've done quite a bit of coordination already with Dane County and with the DNR. And what we're planning at this point is part of this intersection realignment will require some real estate acquisition from one of the Dane County parcels. We'll be giving back some of the existing roadway right-of-way to essentially make that parcel whole. Another thing we'll be doing is having the Capital City Trail will basically be usable. It'll be open the entire time construction is happening. It will be staged. Sometimes there'll be a gravel surface, sometimes there'll be temporary connections, but essentially you'll always be able to go through that area as construction's happening around it. We will continue, oh, sorry, I've got a couple. I'm sorry. We will continue to coordinate with the DNR, with Dane County, and there may be additional requirements, but for now, that's what we're planning, and we're working through all of these requirements through the Department of Transportation process. As you probably know, when you drive through this area, there are wetlands surrounding the existing roadway. So in realigning this intersection, we are going to have some wetland impacts. We're coordinating that with the Department of Transportation through their process to coordinate with the Department of Natural Resources and the Army Corps of Engineers. And wetland impacts will go through the DOT, the Department of Transportation wetland impact process. Go ahead. Thanks.
There are some mid-block crossings that are being considered with the project. Mid-block crossing would be a location where a pedestrian would have the right-of-way. According to state law, when you're outside of an intersection, if there's not a marked crosswalk, the pedestrian would not have the right-of-way. So this would address the long spacing that currently exists between legal crosswalks along the corridor. Any of these that would be considered would include an RRFB. If you've heard that acronym, it stands for Rectangular Rapid Flashing Beacon. So it's those yellow flashing lights that really catch the driver's eye, and it helps just indicate that a pedestrian is at the crosswalk and trying to cross. They're actuated with a button, and they'll usually stay on for a period of time until the pedestrian can cross. So some specific locations where they're being considered. One at Nannyberry Park. So there's currently a path on one side and a sidewalk on another. This would form a connection between the two. This location is one where just grade-wise things work out, and so that's kind of one of the impetus of its location. The other one would be north of Argus Lane, which I touched on before. This one, the location that's shown right here, avoids impacts to the path so that it wouldn't have to be reconstructed as it curves here. It also avoids impact to the historic property that this is the lot line right there where that property starts. So this kind of gets things away from there. And as I noted before, the project will also kind of take the grade down on Syene Road to make visibility better for pedestrians or for motorists. Yes.
Question, is it kind of where people are already crossing, where it's already sort of worn in, like right out the door?
It's around there, yeah.
It's a little bit further north.
Okay.
Yeah, actually where it's worn is on the other side of Argus.
Yeah. So tonight we're requesting feedback on the inclusion of these. So we're specifically looking for feedback on the locations and the inclusion of these crossing locations.
And before we switch off this slide, I apologize. I will just add, currently we're showing the crossing slightly offset from Argus Lane. We could also consider moving it closer to Argus Lane. That would change the impacts to the existing trail on the west side. We would have to do more reconstruction of that trail, and it would mean more potential impacts to that historic property, but that is another alternative we could look at. Sorry about that, Kevin.
Not at all. What are you going to talk about?
I am. Thank you. So One of the things this project is including is on-street parking. This is north of Central Park Place, between the Central Park Place to Argus block. It's on the south end of this block. And the reason this is proposed is currently there's a roadway and a ditch. So if there's package deliveries, food deliveries, those trucks can pull off, kind of be in the ditch, kind of be on the side of the road. Once we add curb and gutter, that won't be possible. So if we were not including parking, if we had curb and gutter, a delivery vehicle could pull over. It would be blocking the bicycle lane, partially blocking the travel lane. On the south end, we have that roundabout, and so we'll have a raised median coming north from that intersection. If a delivery vehicle decided to pull over, they could potentially block all traffic. Moving north of that median, there is the potential that a vehicle could drive around the delivery vehicle, but they might have to cross the center line. So what we're proposing is dedicated space for the through lane, bicycles, and parking. We're also keeping kind of an open space, and that's really meant for utilities. We are focusing the parking on the southern portion of that block, and just kind of heading north. We're limiting impacts on the west side. So near that historic property, the existing pavement line on the west side is going to be the same as the proposed pavement line.
Real quick,
Yep.
what sort of parking, what limitations? Is it you can park there forever, or?
I don't think we've dialed into those details yet, but that's something that,
Those parameters haven't been determined yet.
yep.
Yeah, so I'll finish up talking about the improvements. This project includes overall measures to reduce operating speeds, which we understand are a concern on the corridor. This will urbanize the corridor, as we call it, and when we say that, we mean adding curb and gutter as opposed to the current ditches that are present, really making it less comfortable to speed. That's kind of the background of all of these things that I'll mention, just making it less comfortable for a driver to go too fast. Pavement markings will be improved. As you can see, there's deflection where left turn lanes are proposed or where potential mid-block crossings would be, requiring drivers to kind of make those movements instead of just going straight. The roundabout is kind of central to this segment that we're discussing. We would anticipate that it would reduce operating speeds and calm traffic. There are currently driver feedback speed indicator signs that would continue to be used after the project is constructed. The horizontal deflections, like I mentioned, at the mid-block crossings and due to the left turn lanes. The mid-block crossings themselves will be, they'll have a median, so the lanes will be constricted further from both sides with a raised curbs. You'll have the pedestrian signage, the RFBs, which should all help to make it less comfortable to speed.
Paid some real estate acquisition for this project. And what I mean by that, at least for that kind of middle section, is temporary limited easements. Those would be for grading, for replacement of sidewalk or path. They're just to basically tie back into the existing ground. They're short-term easements that expire at the end of construction. For that northern piece, which is the DOT-funded piece, we also anticipate temporary limited easements for grading. And then we also are anticipating that permanent acquisition from Dane County, like I had talked about. It will include a swap with some existing right-of-way given to Dane County as we purchase some existing right-of-way, so that parcel essentially is whole. For 2024, what you can expect is the road closed for the duration of the project with a signed detour. Access will be maintained for the fire station, for the business that has access off of Syene Road, and also for the residences that have driveways on Syene Road. There will be no through traffic. We will be coordinating with school bus coming up here shortly to see if we're going to impact any school bus stops, and any impacts to garbage pickup or mail delivery that happen as construction progresses will be coordinated directly with the contractor as those things occur. The cost estimate for constructing that East Sherrill Parkway to West Clayton Road, that middle yellow segment, is $3.2 million. And that northern piece is $2.9 million, which includes federal funding of $1.7 million. The project schedule, yes?
You were mentioning access to the roadway.
Yeah.
For Uptown Crossing, we obviously don't have actual driveways connected to the road. I assume we would still be able to use the roadway to get to our homes?
There will be access from the side roads,
So from
but there won't be, correct, yep, but there won't be through traffic all the way up and down the site. Yep, good question.
And part of that decision was made because of what we saw with the construction that's been happening. We tried to keep traffic open, and we were actually creating more issues with potential accidents to the point where it actually slowed down construction. So by closing that off, they can hopefully complete construction quicker and safer.
I wish you guys would have done that down on Syene and Irish Lane. We were told by the city of Fitchburg that they couldn't shut Syene down. That was, they had road closed on it, but they wouldn't shut the road completely down with barricades.
And that
And
was,
the guys that were putting in water main were very scared of their life for that whole, it cost them over 3 weeks.
that does not surprise me.
But Fitchburg wouldn't shut the road down.
So part of that too is we gotta be careful with shutting it down to the point where you don't have emergency access. So the problem that we typically see is people moving barricades. Right? So we'll try to shut it down, but you'll have people who still feel like they can write their own rules.
Yeah, ultimately, we did have a lane open for this project initially. It was not a safe condition for anybody involved, and it did take a lot of coordination and discussion, but everybody did eventually agree that we should shut it down just for safety's sake. So moving forward, that's what we'll do. For the construction project that started in the fall, we expect that to start back up April 1st, like I mentioned, weather dependent, that could change. We do expect the construction to be completed mid-summer. We did have some communication issues with notification when the fall project started up. We think we've figured those issues out, and moving forward, things should be clearer. Yes?
Just one question. When they were paving up to the railroad tracks on Irish Lane, I was talking to a couple of the guys that were riding around in the white pickup trucks of Fitchburg, and I says, you can't shut the train down. And sometimes they got pretty darn close to the train tracks. So Lacey Road is awful. That summertime, that's a busy train.
So that project does include upgrades to the Lacey Road Railroad crossing. And we did coordinate that with the railroad. They are including new crossing panels at that crossing, and they'll be doing that work in coordination with the roadway contractor. We had looked at a lot of different time frames. They do shut down in the winter for 2 or 3 months, depending on weather. But ultimately, they determined that kind of the April timeframe was best for them to get those additional panels in place. Yeah. So for the East Sherrill Parkway to the West Clayton Road segment, that kind of middle segment that was yellow on the location map, for the project schedule, we're anticipating real estate acquisition, and that's that temporary easement for grading that I was talking about. We're anticipating that late spring, early summer of 2023. We'll have final plans at the end of 2023. It'll be a city-let project at the beginning of 2024 with construction in 2024, and we do expect the project to take the entire construction season. For that segment on the north end, the West Clayton Road to McCoy Road segment, as you can see from the project schedule, There are a lot of additional submittals here. Those are really DOT required submittals. But what I want to highlight to you is that we anticipate the real estate acquisition to be likely in the June to October timeframe. We'll have final plans due to the Department of Transportation on November 1st of 2023. It'll go through their letting process in February of 2024, and construction for this intersection during the construction season of 2024. And we do think that this piece will also take the full construction season. Now there is the possibility that we'll have two separate contractors, one for the middle piece, excuse me, one for that northern piece. We will require coordination between those contractors. So how you can get involved, stay notified. The city of Fitchburg has this great feature called Notify Me. It's on their city website. We have the link here. You can sign up for updates on topics or projects, and you'll get an email notification. You can check the project website. We have the link here, or you can reach out directly to the design team, and our contact information is provided. We are requesting feedback by April 5th. And please do remember, we're specifically encouraging feedback on whether or not those mid-block crossings should be included with the project. Tim, do you have anything else you want to make sure we touch base on before we open it up to questions?
Just wanted to thank everyone for coming out. We look forward to your input. Any questions we can answer now, and then kind of walk around and look at the exhibit that KL printed off for us on the table here, and that's just it about from here.
We will have the presentation, the exhibit materials on the project website. The materials from the previous meetings are all included there as well.
Got the questions on mine if you want to do those.
Perfect.
All right. So first one is, are you going to have streetlights at or around the intersection of Syene and East Sherrill? Streetlights.
Yes.
You okay?
If you repeat that, they might not hear it.
I've got it up on that. Yep. Thank you, Joe. We've got, let's see here. After the roundabout in place at 9 Park and Central Park Place, what will the access be for the residents who use the drive between Syene and I think Ballward? They have it as B-U-L-W-E-R.
Uptown Crossing.
Yeah.
Culver's the first street in.
Parallel to South Side.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Kevin, I don't know if you want to talk about kind of intersection roundabout functionality. We can, I'll get back to one of those slides. Maybe. I apologize, bear with me here. This might be faster. Getting close.
Almost.
There we go.
So I think the question's related to the raised medians that would be added. So if your driveway would be across from a raised median, that would limit your ability to turn left into or out of your driveway. But the convenient thing about a roundabout is that, for instance, if you were at this driveway, well, that's a bad example. If you were at this driveway right here and couldn't make a left turn, you'd simply make a right turn and then a U-turn at the intersection.
And I will say that the area in here does have an existing raised median, so we won't be changing that condition. Go ahead.
My house is right in the corner, so I'm wondering for the entryway to the alleyway there, would you be able to, if you're coming northbound and turning to the right, be able to get in there, or is that
Yes.
actual median?
Nope. So this part right here is actual median, and then this part right here, I hope you guys can see my cursor, that's paint. Yep.
How much of a raise on that median?
6 inches, like a standard curve.
More like a speed bump.
Wow.
Not sharp edges, more.
No, multiple.
It'll be, yeah. Flat faced for the median areas here. The curb around the roundabout is a little bit different. That is kind of flatter, just to allow for trucks to track within that kind of inner circle.
More questions? All right. In any of the three phases, will the speed limit be lowered?
It will not. The speed limit was lowered from 45 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour back in 2019. We do believe that we know that the improvements that we're making to make this roadway more urbanized will encourage slower driving.
Sorry. All right, next one. Could the median at Argus be extended to prohibit left turns from Syene Road traveling south?
Okay. Can you read that one more time, Jeremy, please? Thank you.
All right. Could the median at Argus be extended to prohibit left turns from South Syene Road traveling south?
To prohibit, okay. Yep.
So it's a no left turn now?
Yeah. So it is a no left turn now. We've heard that that's not always followed. Was that the understatement? We're a little bit limited in that area because there is a residential driveway on the west side of the road there, and we are trying to limit kind of any impacts on the west side of the driveway along there, just so we're not impacting that historic property. So it's not something that we're including right now.
Well, the point is there is how far is that raised median right there that you're showing with the crosshatch? How far exactly does that go to the south right now?
Exactly, I couldn't say. I couldn't say exactly. I can measure it and provide that as a follow-up.
So as a resident, what I've been seeing is people turning left there and actually taking the right lane to turn into that road. So they're actually going the wrong way onto Argus. So I can see the concern with trying to extend that as far as you can with as much of a raised deterrent as possible.
There are other online questions. Okay, and then we'll take some.
All right, what are the pros versus cons on the street crossings? I don't see why we would not want it safe for pedestrians to cross.
Do you want to talk about mid-block crossings?
On the pro side of things, just giving more pedestrians more opportunities to cross and doing it in a way that would be safe so that the markings are enhanced, that the signage is there, that the RFB, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons are provided. I think cons, I'll start off by saying, there is a cost to all that, especially the RFB installations, which can be kind of pricey in terms of they require a solar panel, a battery, a lot of really robust electronic equipment to be out in the conditions that we have here in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
These lines right here, where's 1 foot? Between what and what? No, I mean, like, is that 1 foot or is that 1 foot or what?
Yeah, those are half-foot
So
increments.
2 lines is 1 foot? Okay, now this is exactly up above this. So the fire department driveway is here, right? So that means the point of the fire department driveway is right there right now.
Yep.
Correct. And the fire department driveway is not getting changed, right? That's what
It
I
is.
understood.
It is getting changed. It is getting reconstructed. We have coordinated with the fire department on how that will work, how we can construct kind of half a side at a time to make sure we're maintaining access throughout the project. But that is going to be part of what we need to do in order to bring kind of carve that hill down.
Yeah, earlier information at the ad hoc meetings in 2021 was the fire department driveway was not going to change, and that limited dropping this only a foot. So when this is right here at a lot of the 1 foot that's being dropped, that's why I'm questioning that about what you're doing.
Yeah, nope, that's a good question. So we are dropping that about a foot, And we are impacting the fire station driveway. We're not going all the way back to the doors. So maybe that was part, I'm not sure what the discussion was, but maybe that was part of the discussion. Kind of where we're not changing it at all. Gotcha, okay.
That's what we heard earlier.
Okay, I guess so.
They did address it. They did address it, and one of the things is initially there was discussion about not changing it. But given the crest of that hill and given the blindsiding that happens as a result of it, the value is in cutting that hill down. So it will impact the front part of our apron, not all the way back to the doors, and the sidewalk there will be impacted a little bit as well.
Okay.
Did we have, yep, go ahead. All the way in back.
So for what it's worth, we actually live on the corner of Syene and Argus, and if you're looking for feedback on anything about that crosswalk that may be going in, I can't tell you how many times a day I'm looking out my window and I'm cringing at the amount of traffic there is there on that corner. So if that is something to be taken into consideration, I highly suggest, even if you need to put up some camera footage just to even see the amount of traffic going back and forth. I mean, you can't change human behavior, whether you put a crosswalk in or not, right? People are gonna cross there no matter what. So I'm definitely leaning on the side, obviously, for advocating for that crosswalk, because it's gonna happen whether you put it in or not.
You had a question? Yep.
So if you go back to the slide about Syene and that one, the 9 Bark, can you elaborate a little bit on what pedestrian activity will look like once that is constructed?
Sure.
This configuration would add a shared use path segment in these areas shown where there's a 10-foot pedestrian walk to accommodate a mixture of bikes and pedestrians. So like I had said before, the bikes can exit the on-street bike lane and then utilize these to get through. You asked about pedestrians, but there could be some mixture going on between the two. And then each of these crossings, these marked crosswalks right here, will facilitate pedestrian movements. They'll be able to stop in the middle so that they only need to contend with one direction of traffic at a time, which is a safety improvement. Does that answer your question?
Myself and some other residents, so I live on 9 Bark there, kind of on that left side of the screen. Currently we have our son and other children that we know, we cross the street across Syene to get to the other side, and it's already kind of a bit iffy. Like, some traffic will stop, some traffic won't. Even like getting to the middle and then going to the other side can be a little tricky, because you'll have the other side is waiting for you, but this side may not, and so it's just a little dicey. So that's really why I wanted to be here tonight, was just to see like how is that going to impact pedestrian activity and help it be safer when it's just kind of a nerve-wracking intersection to cross.
It's there's school bus drops
that
we all contend with.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So I think you had the question next.
Well, I and a couple of other guys I know, we go up and down Syene all the way up to McCoy. And the simplest way to stop these people from just thinking it's, just a straight shot through everywhere. And Fitchburg probably knows me best, because I want stop signs at a lot of intersections, because I want to slow my traffic down in Arch Lane. But why don't we put stoplights in front of Gervasi's? When the people come across the marsh, they're going to do a California stop. They don't care if there's a traffic coming across the railroad tracks on McCoy. They're just, I mean, but if you put stop signs there, by the time they get going up toward the fire station, they're not going to be going 50 miles an hour.
There's going to be a stoplight.
So we are including a stoplight there. So this is Gervasi's right here.
The more you make stop signs and stoplights, not roundabouts, the more you make the traffic stop, people are going to look for the way to drive to go somewhere that's free run. So, I mean, that's,
So, yep, so there will be a stoplight at this intersection, and there will also be some raised medians in the middle. And you can see that this won't be a straight north-south shot. There will be a little bit of kind of horizontal curving, which will also encourage people to go a little bit slower. I know there were a couple other questions. Can we take like 2 more questions here and then jump back to the online questions? All right, I don't know who is next. Go ahead.
Can we go back to the roundabout slide? When we talked about, when we had those ad hoc meetings several years ago, Andrew McFadden indicated at the time that the only measure that we could implement that would give the intersection a passing grade for traffic flow is a roundabout. So I think that needs to be considered. And that's why I'm really glad to see this is still in here. Also, the north side of the roundabout having the crossing lane I think is very positive, because that's another area that people will just cross because there's no crossing. So I'm glad to see that. I'm a big advocate for the mid-block crossings. I think just the more of those that we're adding, it's gonna just help everyone. The closer you are to having a crosswalk, you don't have to make that decision of, do I wanna walk down there versus just crossing right now. So I think that's all very positive. And then the parking, which was mentioned, that's, I think, gonna be a big support for our street as well, just because, like you said, delivery drivers every day are parking along that spot and risking. I'm just waiting for, hopefully nothing happens, but it's a very dangerous spot for delivery trucks. I've mentioned it several times, like, don't park there, park on the alleyways, but you can only tell people so much, it doesn't happen. So.
Appreciate that. Go ahead.
I-
Thank you for being patient.
That's okay. This is a wonderful forum, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you. So 3 questions concerning the roundabout. One is the utilities that I think are on telephone poles right now to, North Syene, north of the roundabout. Will those be put underground or no?
That's to be determined. We need to ask the utility to move those poles as part of the project, and it will be up to them if they want to underground those or move those poles to different locations.
Just a quick aside, I lived in Sun Prairie for many years and encouraged the city planning department to put telephone poles underground along Main Street. And I can't tell you how much better it looks. It's just astounding. So second question, I'm concerned about, I noticed the inner circle of the roundabout there, and I assume that that's a fairly tight roundabout. And I have deep concern about not being able to see over whatever is planted in the middle, so I can see what oncoming traffic there is. Because if I'm going north on South Syene into that intersection, I want to be sure that somebody coming from the north is not going to go through that thing way faster than they should and then turn left in front of me. So I want to be able to see I want to be able to see the traffic coming toward me, whether I'm going south or north on Syene. So just a commentary about that. The last thing, and I appreciate your patience around this, I have concern about those folks who live in the southwest corner and the northeast corner, because at night they're going to get a lot of headlights that they wouldn't be getting previously. I'm wondering if there's a way to create hedges or something like that, perhaps on the inside of the bike paths that are there, or the walking paths, so that they're less disrupted by those lights shining at night into their homes.
Do you want to talk about any of those items, or? We haven't. We've just started talking about what is going to go in the middle of that roundabout. Haven't determined it yet. So,
but to your point, as far as being able to see people coming, you are correct. This is somewhat of a smaller roundabout size than you'd normally see. The design intent there is so that people are physically forced. I mean, at some point, people can go faster than they should, but that's all kind of relative. So hopefully faster than they should at this roundabout is slower than most of them.
I recognize that, but it's also a shorter space, so, which gives you maybe the equivalent reaction time around making a decision to go into the intersection or not. So I hope you folks can be aware of that, and maybe you can plant clover or something in the middle as opposed to prairie grasses or something.
Just had a minor clarifying question on the sidewalks on the east side of South Syene Road at Sherrill Parkway. There's the two existing homes with no sidewalk in between. Is the plan to put a sidewalk there?
Yes.
Just a couple things directly in response to what the gentleman in the front row was talking about with regards to this roundabout at the intersection here. As my husband mentioned, we live in the northeast corner right here, the house that you can see on the picture there. And so,
sorry about that.
So I think early on in some other design meetings, and this may have changed, it sounds like you're still talking about planting and what's going to go in the middle of the roundabout, but there was a consideration that it might actually all just be paved and sort of gradually raised. And I think the idea was things like semi-trucks are not going to be able to make such a tight turn with the radius the way it is.
Keep
And
them out
so
of there.
the consideration at the time, I think, was maybe not even planting anything there and just having it all be paved. So maybe that's still an option. And then the second thing that I wanted to say is just for us living in the house that we live in, we don't really have any windows on that side of the house anyway. So I'm not super concerned about the headlights. There's like a bathroom window and some very small windows in our living room that are way up high. So,
It's very helpful.
but thank you for considering.
So let's take some more online questions and then we can come back. Go ahead, Jeremy.
All right, we live in Swan Creek and use the bike walking paths along Syene Road. We observed many cars exceeding the speed limit between 9 Bark and East Sherrill. Have you considered speed bumps?
So for an arterial roadway like this, speed bumps would not generally be a treatment that we would consider in a location like this.
A couple more online.
Next one is anything being considered to deter high-speed cars between Syene and Sherrill intersection and the new roundabout?
A couple of, yep, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I think we touched on a few of those. It's really a corridor-wide treatment, just the way that the design is moving forward with these features that I was discussing, the curb and gutter, the pavement markings, the increased deflection, to make this less of a straight shot and to make it less comfortable. So from a design standpoint, which is what we can address, we feel that we are taking measures to improve that.
Next one is, what is the speed limit in the roundabout?
There wouldn't be like a separate posted speed limit, so the prevailing speed limit would be the legal speed limit. I think it would be very difficult to traverse that roundabout at 35 miles an hour.
It also asks, will there be pedestrian lights in the roundabout?
There would not be, no. Would there be pedestrian lights in the roundabout? I suppose if they're asking for like street lighting, there would be street lighting, but there wouldn't be like an RFB or anything.
Can we do a couple more? Okay, go ahead.
Fitchburg don't like speed bumps. I've offered to pay for them on Irish Lane. Same with the stop signs. So, although I'd like to see who I can buy the flashing red lights up here on Syene, when you're going over the speed limit. I like those flashing red and blues. Yeah. That catches your eye. I don't know if that's going to help the speed limit, the racetrack on an Irish Lane, but I think it might catch your eye.
I did just want to say, I'm so thankful that those signs went up, because living on that street, I've noticed the difference. It still can get a lot better, but having those up is really helpful.
Yeah, it makes people notice, oops.
How do you determine the priorities for the phase for the different sections?
For when the construction is happening?
Yeah, because I feel the middle section is probably the most important in those other sections.
Can you repeat that?
So he wanted to know how we determined the priority for which phase was being constructed when. It was a lot of different things. A large piece of it was applying for additional funding for construction for that middle piece and for that northern piece. Just the timing of those applications and when the funding would become available did have impacts on when that was constructed. So that did allow us to move forward with that southern piece right away.
I mean, you know what I mean, that southern piece?
The southern piece didn't really qualify for and was already fairly far ahead, just from the intersection evaluation and some other pieces. So that was the piece that I guess the city determined to move forward with.
And Quick Trip's construction was actually delayed a little bit because of construction. That was supposed to be constructed about a year ago.
Yeah, they did delay their construction to better coincide with this project, and then it was delayed even further.
Considering that phase one there from not even as far south as Lacey Road, really like in front of the BP and then out through East Sherrill, that's a fairly short section. Didn't get done last year when it was supposed to, got way behind. Now you gotta use 2023 to actually finish a whole lot of work there. It just seems like doing the yellow section and the blue section in the same year, you're really pushing your luck.
So part of the delays with the red section, and I totally agree, part of the delay was the contractor got started later than we had planned in the season. We had always expected it to start in 2022 and finish in 2023. We did also run into rock at the East Sherrill intersection, which slowed things down, required some redesign, and we also ran into quite a bit of soils issues, which we knew were potentially going to happen. Josh, I don't know if you want to, I'm going to put you on the spot, but Josh is...
There's no rocks under the yellow section or the blue section. The soil is just fine under there. You're pushing it.
Okay. You know, I guess all we can do is, you know, we have spreadsheets, we have calculations, we look at all of the work that's going to be done, we look at all of the days that are typically available for construction, we use modeling for all of that. It's the best we can do. And so it is not a perfect system. It is absolutely not a perfect system. We run into things. Things don't go to plan. And I totally take your point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying is you better have a contingent. You're gonna run into winter sooner than you think and problems that you didn't expect. And then what are you gonna do there compared to the red section?
One thing that has been addressed is the staging. Closing. Sorry. So in phase one, we had the traffic detour plan having traffic open during that. And we ran into trial and error with that and determined going for phase 2 and 3 that traffic will be shut down completely through there. And that'll speed up your construction process because you don't have to phase doing one half at a time while dealing with traffic. So that contributed pretty significantly also to the delay for the end of last year leading into it. If that makes sense. So like we had talked about, they are completely closing phase 2 and 3 to help address that speed-wise.
I would also just add that these are going to be separately let projects. Like Sam said, there could be different contractors, so it's not really doing twice the length. It's kind of two parallel tracks.
Maybe just require the contractors to actually get out there and work, because there was a lot of days in the red section where there was nobody there working. It's like, come on, get going.
I'm appreciative for their work.
Yep. I had a question regarding kind of towards the beginning of your presentation when you were talking about adding the parking and the bike lanes on Syene. What does that look like for the west side of that street? Right now there is quite a bit of green space between that walking path and the street. Will that cut into that, or what does the spacing look like, I guess, for this development and what it currently looks like today?
So,
So,
the
yeah,
space
so
right
along
here.
that side, yep.
I don't know that I have a great,
You're right, that last one kind of showed part of it.
yeah, I think the parking slide might help. Bear with me here while I, yeah, so, yep, so the intersection is here where the roundabout is gonna go. And you can see that there's some kind of widening on this side that will take some of that green space, but not a tremendous amount. Yep.
You did a pretty good job of delineating it on this map here.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So it's taking some of the green space between Syene and the west side where the bike path is.
Correct. The bike path itself will stay where?
Original, I believe, maybe because of the parking being added or what have you. I was then on the resident input meetings.
Okay.
I didn't think at that point they were confident it wasn't supposed to be altered at all on the west side. But you're saying that's not the case.
It will be altered between the existing road and where the path is. It will not be altered between the path and the homes, except for right at the intersection. There will be some adjusting for that roundabout construction.
Try again. All right, let's see. Will there be streetlights added on Syene between 9 Park and East Sherrill?
Between Park and East Sherrill. We are including streetlights at East Sherrill and at 9 Bark, and depending on whether or not that mid-block crossing gets included, we would look at lighting that crossing. We are not proposing continuous lighting.
Next one, will there be streetlights put on the middle and north phase?
At intersections and kind of those spot locations like mid-block crossings. Again, not continuous, not lighting all the way up and down the road.
Then there was just a comment about the speed bumps. Thankful to hear there's no speed bumps and that would be installed, that would be very noisy to residents.
Okay. That's okay. Other questions? Yes?
Just to clarify, so the speed that's currently on Syene 35, you're saying that posted speed limit will not be changed once the road has been reconstructed?
Correct.
Why is that?
It's still an arterial roadway, just meaning that the traffic volume and kind of the location in Dane County, it's a fairly major north-south corridor. And so although we're making it more urban, trying to have people not even really slow down vehicles, but have them obey the speed limit, we do still need to move traffic through the corridor. Go ahead in the back.
The obvious comparison for that is Park Street in Madison is 25, and East Wash is 25.
Yeah.
So that's not a great argument.
Yeah, because I used to work with City Man. Those roads, South Park, East Wash, those roads are, truthfully, are not built to go 25. It's excruciatingly difficult because the road is not built. It's a divided highway or divided road. So I know the speed reduction things you're doing will encourage people to slow down because people typically go as fast as they feel comfortable going. So I understand that, but I agree with the comment behind you. You're comparing this at 35 to South Park Street or East Wash or Whitney or whatever roads that they've all vision zeroed to 25, which that's, I think, the lunatic fringe to the other way. But this is, you know, kind of counterintuitive to those types of decisions that are held, that are in Madison. I realize it's not Fitchburg, but nonetheless.
Yeah, I think, doesn't mean we can't lower it at some point in the future. I say let's put in the improvements first, see what happens. If we're having issues, that doesn't mean we can't lower it. So let's see, we hired these professional engineers to put in these improvements, the horizontal alignments, the roundabouts. So let's see if the improvements work first, and then, you know, if not, we can reevaluate that and lower it at some point in the future too, so.
To me, it just seems, it seems the city in the input meetings that I was in on, they seem very, very reluctant to toy with the speed limit, even though they approved the neighborhood that went in on South Syene, which is a very, you know, their houses are together, they're very dense, they create a neighborhood that is supposed to have the ambiance of maybe a slower and you're doing all these improvements, yet there's still the somewhat reluctance or the deaf ear to thinking about considering the speed limit. They seem to be adamantly against it. So it seems like everything else around it would suggest otherwise. That's all I'm saying. I understand what you're saying, but just telling you, I live on 9 Park, so I see all of it all the time. I walk all over the area. It's, you know, I don't trust any cars. I never used anything but the crosswalk. So I'm just throwing it out there.
I think you bring up a good point about some of the roadways in Madison that have the 25-mile-an-hour speed limits, but it's difficult for you as a driver to go that speed. It is for me too. I think, you know, this is a little bit different approach where maybe the speed limit is a little bit higher, but the characteristics of the roadway should make it easier to be compliant. So sometimes those roadways that you mentioned, roadways like them, the speed limit may be 25, but if you collect the speed data for the vehicles that are on the roadway, that's not really what the intersection or the roadway is operating at, which that lack of predictability can be a problem in and of itself. So you would expect to see a higher dispersion in speeds at a roadway like that versus a roadway that hopefully is kind of in unison with the speed limit and the design characteristics, creates more predictability for everyone, cyclists and drivers and pedestrians.
If you are right, Park Street, even East Wash, everybody's going, there's the whole gamut of speed going on there.
Does speed boards collect data?
Some do. I don't know if these do.
I don't know if I'm not sure if the ones we purchased do, but I can look into that and see. I think they may, because we had an app was on the invoice, so I believe we do collect the data. So I'll have to check with our street superintendent on that.
Another thing to remember about the slower speeds is typically the people most impacted with that, with speeding tickets, are those that live closest to. So all of us that live in that area are more likely to get speeding tickets because of the fact that it's 25.
Yeah, so when you're trying to figure out which of these things to implement that seem to kind of still be up in the air, and you're probably going to collect feedback and make a decision on some of these things, how do you prioritize those things, like where the crosswalks go, if you're going to put one in, if you're not going to put one in? Is it kind of based on like everybody here in the room and everyone that submits feedback to kind of like tally it up? Just looking for ways to make sure that if we do want to promote some change and help with your decision-making process, how we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, generally, especially with something like those mid-block crossings, we really are looking for feedback. It isn't a, you know, sort of a data-driven decision on our end. We're looking for, you know, kind of what the public feedback is on those.
Submit our feedback then in a written form. Thank you.
Could you go to the slide which has the blue, yellow, and the construction sequence? Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So a number of people live in the 9 Bark, that area. It's a fairly large neighborhood, as you can tell. So this is west of Syene. Our route during construction to, say, get to Madison or the Beltline would be to, go down to East Sherrill, over to Fish Hatchery, and then north from there?
Yes, or to Highway 14.
Okay, all right, got it. Yeah, through Lacey or something like that. Okay, all right, thank you.
last thing I'm gonna say on speed. I do think we could consider a subsection of that reduction from going down from the new T intersection to the roundabout. So we talked about slowing speed down before you get to that roundabout because there's nothing to say how fast you're supposed to go going in there. The majority of, I think, risk to people is along our stretch of Syene there where the houses front the road. So you could look at a smaller section of speed reduction and then possibly going up to 35 below that, south of that.
And from a speed standpoint, what we're seeing here at the fire department, just trying to pull out, it's this Daytona curve that we got right here. And when people are coming around, they're going so fast that they don't necessarily have the predictability of what's coming out of these intersections. So I think having that T intersection is gonna first of all slow them down because they have to negotiate a turn, and it's not gradual.
And I think if they do that, and they start them at 25 possibly, devil's advocate, they're not gonna, and then they hit a roundabout, you're not giving them those opportunities to speed up.
Just a comment, I think I know that it's not enforceable, but I think it's confusing. Right now, we have a Hill Blocks View sign that says 30, followed by a speed limit sign that says 35 with flashers. Like, there's a little bit of confusing signage. And I live across the street in the historic property, right? So I take it at 25 and make all the drivers behind me angry because I slow down. But but that signage maybe just could be cleaned up in the meantime somehow.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. Absolutely.
So I know you want us to provide input on the mid-block crossings. I'm assuming there is money already in the budget. You're assuming that they're going to get done and you have money in the budget for these mid-block, whatever you call them, RF, whatever the acronym is. Is that correct?
Flashy lights.
Flashy lights. So it's already included, so, right? So
The construction cost estimate that we provided includes those improvements.
So, okay, why not just go for it? I mean, it seems odd to ask if you've already got the money. What are you gonna do with the money? I mean, you have to spend it, it's the government, so, okay. And then is there anything, is there anything in the project besides the input with the mid-crossing that you are still working through that may or may not change as you work through this year with its continued design? That people either should know about or could provide input on or might constitute another meeting that would say, we've tweaked the plan, et cetera, because from the initial customer or resident input to what it is, things have changed, or, several things have changed from, understandably. So to keep on top of that, because sometimes with the changeover or people leaving the department, we weren't really notified about changes in the plan.
No, and I appreciate that, and I know there's been a struggle with kind of changes in the city contacts and the kind of communication with who people were meeting with, and then those people left, and so there have been some disconnects. And so it's helpful to us to understand and know what those conversations were, what those discussions were. A lot of the kind of design details we've laid out tonight are pretty solid. But anything you guys can provide as far as just your sort of user experience on the corridor is always really helpful for us. Go ahead first and then I'll, yep.
Provide a little more clarity on then who would make the final decisions on the designs for these different segments. Where the federal money is involved, is that a different body that makes that decision? Are these committees, or is it the city government that ultimately makes the decision? Because we could provide a lot of input, and is somebody going to ignore it?
So we never ignore input, but we don't always implement input. I don't ever want you guys to feel like we're ignoring input we get, but we can't always implement everything. I will say that all of the decisions on the yellow section are going to be city decisions, whether that's at the staff level whether it's at Public Works Board level, Bike Ped Committee, Transportation and Transit Commission, Council. There's a lot of different variables for who will make those decisions. For the northern portion in blue, ultimately, the Department of Transportation has a lot of design requirements and criteria. As long as we're within those thresholds, the city has flexibility to make decisions.
So on the yellow segment, we'll have to keep a close eye on who's doing what when, if there are agendas where decisions will be made and the like?
I would suggest if you're interested and would be willing to provide your email address, we could include you on some email group updates. Signing up for the Notify Me through the city website will give you notifications when there's project updates. Keeping an eye on the project website, which if you sign up for Notify Me, it will tell you when there's updates to the website, or if you want to take a peek at the website, or just reaching out directly. But I really do want to make sure that I want to acknowledge that we do understand there's a lot of input, and we do understand that there's been a lot of kind of transition and turnover, and I'm sure there are pieces that we've kind of missed in that transition. So, please give us that feedback. Like I said, we can't promise we're going to implement everything, but we never ignore. Go ahead.
Could you just display the slide that has the links on it, please?
Yes.
I'd just like to take a picture of it and so forth. That's how you can get involved. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead.
When the construction starts up again this spring, I was wondering if like the road closure updates are communicated to the Madison and Oregon School District transportation departments. Because in the fall, our bus for the Oregon School District, there were days where the bus driver couldn't get to certain parts of the neighborhoods or couldn't turn around, and we weren't sure if that was because the school district didn't tell him, or we're just curious.
Yeah, no, there were unfortunately some communication breakdowns and notifications when the fall construction started. I have the email addresses and phone numbers of the bus drivers that drive those routes. We did try to provide some kind of temporary loops through neighborhoods so they could continue those routes, including some no parking areas. Unfortunately, people parked in some of the no parking areas, and so the buses couldn't get through. It was sort of a day by day, week by week sort of a battle, but we were communicating with them directly. We were calling them, emailing them, and same for the project that when it'll be starting up. Let them know about the meeting. They know this is happening. They know things will start back up, but there were absolutely some snafus with all of that original notification. So.
And if I may put in a plug, real quick, the things that were not communicated last year did not come from KL Engineering. It did not come from the city. It's when construction started, and it started without notification. I can tell you, from your fire department standpoint, we were equally disappointed with the lack of notification because it does impact our ability to get out of here. So we worked with Department of Public Works. They were able to turn that around immediately. So it's a really good idea to take down this information so that you can also communicate that in the case you have questions.
I just wanted to make a comment. Many of us here were in those public input meetings, and I think that our overarching consensus was safety, and I think that you've done a good job of incorporating a lot of those elements of design, and thank you. But that is where we all came together. I mean, it really started out contentious, and we all kind of came together on safety, so.
I actually just wanted to comment that I'm the Fact TV manager, and we actually do communications as well with construction updates, and Tim's just getting on board and getting used to the TV side of things. But our idea is, I mean, we do daily newscasts from the city standpoint, put out information. We tape all the city meetings, commission meetings, so the decisions that are being made, that are being talked about in the commissions are actually covered, broadcasted live, and you're welcome to not only come to the meeting, but do the online portion like we do with Zoom. So I want you to be aware of that that's through the city's website. It might be hard to figure out which commission's doing what. You'll have to look at agendas, but there's access there. And I hope with Tim, as his staff gets back on board and stuff, we did a lot of updates during the Fish Hatchery Road construction project update. We tried to do them bi-weekly or monthly, and I would hope with Tim, we'll do the same thing as this project moves forward too. I know last year kind of got off to a weird start too for us for getting information out there, but we're another wing that's trying to get out info to you that if these guys aren't doing it and Tim's not doing it, we might be doing it as well. I know that's confusing, but that's through Fact TV, so just search us up, social media, online, we got you covered.
Your alders also do a really good job in representing your best interest. So know who your alder person is and reach out to them, because ultimately the approval is theirs at the council level.
And conveniently, one of them is here
Two
tonight.
of them are.
Well, he's not for this district.
I'm council president, though.
For now.
Offer a suggestion
For
too.
now.
I was a transit planner for the city of Madison, so I did all the Metro bus detours, so I know how hard it is to keep construction on plan, and so I know that if they're trying their best, typically they are. I mean, I've always had good interactions with the engineering and the construction groups, but if you see a message board go up, which they usually have to give you a 5 business day notice, it certainly doesn't hurt to say, oh, well, Susie and Johnny's bus routes might be getting detoured in a week. Maybe I should just contact the city, just be sure all the dots are crossed, T's are crossed, and the dot, because sometimes you see things and you just hope that they're going to be squared away, and then there's a miscommunication, or the bus companies don't get notified, and it's just another set of eyes on the street. So
It also doesn't hurt for parents to call their bus companies.
right, so those are always good, because many things come up unbeknownst to the cities or the counties, and all of a sudden a crew shows up and nobody knows, and sometimes, you know, it's another way to circumvent. So if you see stuff and you're not sure, you want to double check. It's always helpful to have eyes on the street as well.
Are the contracts signed for these projects?
No,
Are they up to bid?
they'll be out to bid in early 2024.
But the one that they're trying to finish up, that should have been done,
That is under contract.
That's
I
under-
apologize. Yep,
okay.
so the one that's, under construction right now, that is under contract.
So they
Yep.
can't sit there and give you a bunch of grief that they're not gonna do it because they need more money.
I mean, they give Josh grief, not
They usually have milestones that they have to get the contract done by a certain date, or there's financial implications, so there's incentives for them to
So
get them done.
the yellow and the blue aren't even up for contract yet.
correct. So we will hang out for a while. If you guys want to look at what kind of the entire corridor looks like, we have a roll plot on the side tables over here. The plan is laid on top of aerial, so that might be clearer to look at what the whole corridor looks like. We're around for questions, and please feel free to contact us separately as well.
One more question.
Oh, yes, yep.
We've got one just on, fire chief here. Will the fire trucks be able to control the stop and go lights as needed?
At present, no.
There was talk of putting a light down.
Oh, let me put it this way. Will there be traffic preemption? Yes. So as we're approaching the intersection, the lights will be controlled, but they will not just automatically turn colors because we're leaving the fire station. If we go north, the good news is if all of this happens the way that it's designed, the hill gets cut down, it's a lot easier to see our flashing lights. So, and with the speed being controlled, it makes it easier for us to get out.
appreciate everybody attending, everybody online as well. Hang around if you have questions, and please feel free to contact us separately as well. Thank you.